Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. In this video I'll explain how my friend and I built this beautiful bookstop out of walnut and scrapped brake rotor, and how you can too. After my friend cut the rotor into fifths and bandsaw and jointed the walnut to an aesthetic shape, it was my turn. Essentially I needed to find a way to fit all of this together. I started by attaching the two sides of the rotor together by putting a 1/2-inch bolt through the existing hole, and then I threw it on the milling machine and drilled 2 additional clearance holes for fasteners. Note that, like many parts of this project, I'm using far more expensive equipment than necessary, and for this part in particular, a hand drill would entirely suffice. I said earlier that this bookstop was made from a brake rotor, but technically this is actually false. It's made from 2 different brake rotors. My next task, therefore, is to flatten both sides. An angle grinder with either a grinding disc or a flap disc would totally work for this, but I'm going to be using the milling machine with a 4-flute roughing end mill, as it will result in a flatter surface. Unfortunately, I quickly realized that this part was more difficult than I had initially anticipated, as the 2 parts started to deform in the mill vise under the cutting loads. I ended up adjusting the fixturing of the parts, and being gray steel, roughing the rest of the part was a piece of cake, except that my refixturing resulted in part of the rotor being outside of the cutting area of the milling machine, so I ended up having to use the angle grinder after all, both to flatten those areas and deburr the edges. Let's talk about the wooden contact parts a little more. I wanted to give them a bit of a semi-modern geometric look, so I routed in a series of chamfers to the edges. This got a bit awkward with some of the shorter edges. I then sanded the parts 180 grit, both with an orbital sander and by hand. Now comes the hard part, attaching everything together accurately. I decided to use M6 machine screws through the walnut contact pieces and threading into the brake rotor. I started by lining up the wood to the rotor to roughly locate where the holes should be, and then drilled those holes in the wooden parts with a hand drill. I then punched through those holes to locate where they should be in the rotor, and then drilled and tapped them in short order. Walnut has a beautiful natural grain, so I decided to avoid staining and go with a clear coat of Rubio Monocoat, which I applied by hand. We decided to powder coat the brake rotors, which was preceded by sandblasting and cleaning with isopropyl, none of which unfortunately we got on camera. If you don't have powder coating capabilities, I'd recommend a few coats of a rust preventative such as Rust-Oleum. They're super easy to apply, and I really like the matte black finish personally. You can see the finished product here. It came out pretty well, save for a slight misalignment of the rotor and one of the contact parts. We're actually going to be selling this piece, so if you like what you see in this video, feel free to check the links in the description for more details on that. I hope you all enjoyed this build. I've got some exciting projects coming down the pipeline, so if you'd like to see more, I'd appreciate it if you'd like and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for listening everybody, and I'll catch you all next time.